of Sister Kenny treatment has enabled me to go on with my life.
During the polio epidemic in the early to mid-20th century, a little-known bush nurse from Australia, Elizabeth Kenny, introduced her innovative polio treatment method. Her personality and passion for her innovation sparked controversy, yet she persevered, ultimately changing the lives of hundreds of thousands of polio patients, but also impacting the future of physical and rehabilitation medicine. Elizabeth Kenny, born in 1880 in New South Wales, didn't have any formal medical education. However, as a child, when she was being treated for a broken arm at the home of Dr. McDonald, she memorized all of the bones and muscles and how they functioned, even making her own models. She used this information to help teach her disabled brother how to become stronger. In 1911, Kenny first developed the Kenny method of treating infantile paralysis with patient Amy McNeil in the Australian bush. Combined with her previous medical knowledge and her intuitive and innovative abilities, she used a combination of warm heat wraps and massage to treat the young patient. One knee was drawn up toward the face, and the foot was pointed downward. Any attempt to straighten caused the child extreme pain. The little girl was indeed very sick, with an ailment that was unknown to me. Over weeks of treatment, Amy regained full function, and Kenny successfully treated 6 other polio patients in the area. Kenny became an Australian bush nurse during World War I and earned the title of Sister Kenny, which is the equivalent of a head nurse. While she was loved by her patients, her strong personality resulted in her making enemies throughout her life. Kenny's invention of the Sylvia stretcher in 1927 provided her funding to treat polio patients as a new epidemic began. The public insisted on clinics being established for Sister Kenny to accept patients. However, there was immediate backlash by the traditional medical community. Kenny used terms such as muscle spasms and muscle re-education, which were not familiar to the medical community. But the public outcry went out, and clinics were established in multiple cities. As her friend Dr. McDonald stated, "You have knocked our theories into a cocked hat, but your treatment works, and that's all that counts." He also cautioned her, "Go ahead with your ideas, but whatever you do, don't fight with the medical profession, because if you do, you won't make any progress." The Australian government then funded Kenny's trip to the United States in 1940 to share the Kenny method with others. Some historical records now show that physicians and government officials wanted to send Kenny to the U.S. to prevent further controversy in Australia. Kenny's innovative treatment method consisted of warm wraps made out of wool being used to treat muscle spasms, followed by active massage and movement of the affected muscles.
And they were wool, real thick, heavy, wet, you know? And but I did feel better after them.
This was in total opposition to the accepted practice in the U.S. of complete immobilization. Physicians believed that the polio-stricken muscles had died, and the other healthy muscles were pulling on the weak ones, causing deformity. Therefore, orthodox treatment called for total immobilization with plaster casts, splints, and rigid metal frames. Kenny's innovation was based on her belief that the muscles affected by the polio virus needed re-education, which included active movement. This totally contradicted orthodox treatment.
A lot of those people became wheelchair bound because their muscles got weaker, their joints were not strong, and their overall condition was weaker, and so were confined to wheelchairs much sooner than people with active exercises and programs.
So when Kenny first came to Los Angeles, male physicians discounted the work of this strong-willed female nurse. They felt threatened by Kenny since she didn't follow the protocols of male physicians being the boss, and since she challenged their traditional treatment methods.
Sister Kenny treatment, but I believe the doctors of management there, they rather poo-hooed the treatment because she was not a doctor, and that was very important. Be treated by a doctor. Just the ordinary nurse just didn't have the stature that she did.
Kenny then traveled to New York, hoping for a better reception for her innovation, yet she received the same response in a meeting with Basil O'Connor of the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. Committed to her innovation, she traveled to the Mayo Clinic, where she was invited by Dr. Milton Knapp to begin treating a small number of patients at the University of Minnesota Hospital. Polio patients treated with the innovative Kenny method experienced rapid recoveries with less residual disability. The Kenny method was not a painless treatment.
I didn't like it because I remember very distinctly seeing the machine that they had. They'd roll it into my room, and I would proceed to start screaming from that moment on. I hated it.
Her personality and passion for her innovation sparked controversy, yet she persevered. A British medical journal article cited the results of a study which supported the effectiveness of her innovation. While this lady with a big voice and even bigger hats still alienated traditional physicians, the public clamored for more patients to be treated. Thousands of nurses were trained in the Kenny method, and the Sister Kenny Institute was opened in Minneapolis in 1942. Even though many in the male-dominated physician community still discounted her innovation, the tide had turned. Kenny met with President Roosevelt, and the public treated her as a celebrity. Several movies were made of her life and work, and she was the only person to rise above Eleanor Roosevelt in a Gallup poll of the most admired women in the United States. By the time she returned to Australia in 1952, the controversy surrounding the person had not gone away, but the Kenny method of treating polio patients was well established. In fact, this was the beginning of active physical therapy and rehabilitation medicine in the United States. Sister Kenny and her innovation not only changed medical treatment, but also changed the way the public perceived physicians. No longer were they considered to be above reproach, but nurses were also beginning to gain respect. Sister Kenny died in Australia in 1952, but by this time, hundreds of thousands of lives had been positively impacted by her innovative polio treatment methods. 1 year after her death, the polio vaccine was created, yet the Kenny method was adapted for use with other medical conditions, and was the beginning of rehabilitation therapy as we know it today.
Physical therapy came along, or Sister Kenny came along, to help with getting people moving versus staying still, and that got their muscles stronger and kept their joints mobile, and gave them better self-esteem as well.
I have diligently served the people of the world, and I am happy to say that I have lived to see my theories proved and my work established in many countries. Sister Elizabeth Kenny.